we don't want our young people to leave. So let's provide housing. Let's cut the parking minimums. Let's put in an LRT. Let's put in bike lanes with priority winter clearing so that people can use them year round. Let's respect that, right? So if you don't follow Michael Jens on Instagram, I suggest you do. He's one of the city councils in Edmonton. It's shocking every time I see his post. I'm like, you're a city councilor? You're just so bold and, and willing to put his neck on the line. And he's getting reelected and people love him. And it goes to show, listen, you got to stand up. You can't just compromise all the time, because if you compromise all the time, you're going to end up compromised.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Active Towns channel. My name is John Simmerman, and that is Patty Wiens, the Bicycle Mayor up in Winnipeg in Manitoba. We're going to be talking a little bit about her journey to becoming the Bicycle Mayor of Winnipeg, and talking a little bit about winter cycling and some of the other interesting activities they are up to up there as they're trying to become more of a bike-friendly environment. So let's get right to it with Patty. Patty, thank you so much for joining me on the Active Towns podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
It is exciting. I always love connecting with my friends from the Great White North, but it's not very white up in Winnipeg right now. What the heck is going on?
Well, it's called, I don't know if you guys heard of this, but climate change. This is terrifying. It's exciting because I'm Brazilian, right? And I moved here 30 some years ago, but it's also a little frightening that it can be like this right now at this time of year. It's still in the pluses, and it's not normal.
Yeah, it's not normal. Well, Patty, as you probably know, I love giving my guests an opportunity to quickly introduce themselves. So who the heck is Patty?
Right. So I am the first bicycle mayor of Winnipeg, and I'm a Brazilian living in the Great White North. I've been here for 34 years, and I only began riding my bike in winter 2 years ago. So I'm a fairly new winter cyclist, but I identify strongly with winter cycling because winter cycling really changed my life. It was the catalyst to all things bike advocacy. In the same way that our friend Tom talks about how, putting his kids on a stroller and taking them to school made him become an advocate for safe streets, is how I identify myself, thinking of winter cycling as the catalyst for all things bike advocacy. And that's me.
Yeah. And just to be sure, when we talk winter cycling, we're talking about cycling in snow, which is, I'm impressed given the fact that, yes, you're originally from Brazil, but you've been up there for 30 years, and like you said, within the last few years, you got into this. You got into riding all year round, including if it's cold and snowy.
Well, that first picture, actually, John, is on the river.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. That's great. It's frozen over.
Yeah, it is. It all began because I wanted to get to work without having to pay for parking. That's how it started. I didn't want to pay for parking in downtown Winnipeg. So then I said, you know what, I am going to try this thing. And I started doing research on how to ride my bike in winter. And there was no women in this space on YouTube, nothing. There was just, guys in Lycra in the UK talking about winter cycling. And then this guy right here popped up, Tom Babin,
right in the middle there. Yeah.
Right in the middle there. He popped up on my feed, and I thought, oh, well, he's not, a 50-year-old woman living in the prairies, but close enough he'll have to do. And so I started watching a lot of his videos, and I told my partner, I think I can do this. I think I'm going to try it. And he said, why not? Just do one day at a time, put one layer on at a time. And it's crazy. It's crazy what happened. The first day that I tried it and I went to work, I got there and I felt like I had superpowers. I was walking around my office going, I'm invincible. There's nothing I can't do. And I knew that something had happened to me that I couldn't go back. And so, and I often talk about this, that just like what Tom Babin said in his book, Frostbite, he talks about how there's like a special power that you get inside. It's something that you save inside when you become a winter cyclist. The same thing happened to me. And I knew that my life was never going to be the same.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you've mentioned Tom Babin, of course, is a fellow YouTube content creator. And why don't you go ahead and introduce Tom a little bit? And how did you end up connecting with him and meeting in person?
This is a great story, actually. So I studied Tom. I really became obsessed with all his videos because he was really the Canadian guy talking about winter cycling, right? And to me, that was the closest thing that I could imagine. He's in Calgary. I'm in Winnipeg, close enough. We kind of get the same weather. So I became obsessed with all his videos and I learned everything. And then I said to my partner, there's no women in this space. I think I need to create a YouTube channel. And he's like, let's do this, right? And so I became a mini celebrity here in Winnipeg. It's a small town. I mean, it's a small city. And I became sort of the bike person, even though I had just started. But I was vocal and I was willing to be on camera. So then that's what I became. Exactly. So fast forward a few months, and I decided that for my 50th birthday, I was going to do a challenge. I was going to ride my bike for 50 kilometers and raise money for our local food bank. So me, my partner, and a friend did this ride, and we ended up at the Forks, which is a sort of a central touristy spot here in Winnipeg, to celebrate my birthday. And we had lots of friends join us. And at the end of the night, as we're leaving and unlocking our bikes, this is March 10, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, we're unlocking our bikes, and this guy walks by and he says, what did you do? Ride your bike to go skating? And I turning around and I'm going to give him a piece of my mind, and it's Tom Babin. And I'm like, what? What are you doing here? And so it was really
you recognized
cool.
him right away?
Right away, because I was obsessed with his videos. And I said, you have to understand, you're the reason I'm here. You're the reason that I felt empowered enough to do this. And so actually, Tom and I became friends from then on. And I reached out to him when we were doing our Winter Cycling 101 live stream on my channel there. And, I'm just so grateful. He's so generous with his time. And we connected during that's the one right there. We connected during the Winter Cycling Congress in Edmonton. And he's been really generous with advice. He's had me on his channel to talk
Great.
about. So there you go. There's the crew right there. It was great.
And we also have Pekka Takola from Oulu, Finland, was also part of this.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
He is wild. Pekka took us on a wild goose chase in Edmonton when we were together, and he had this map that he wanted to fill as many routes as possible. So we went around and we didn't even know where we were half the time, but yeah. So
yeah,
it's been really
Pekka loves
great.
doing. By the way, Pekka loves doing that. That's when I interviewed Pekka. He wanted to do the interview on bike as he was riding around Oulu. It was not in the wintertime, though. It was in the summertime. And I'm like, sure, let's do it. Let's record a podcast episode with you on the bike and me in the studio. And I loved it. It was probably one of my favorite all-time videos and interviews, because, he's in his element. Pekka just loves being on his bike. He was like, is there any way I can do this? I'm like, it's up to you. Do you have the technology? And he does, clearly. So that's great.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun, and he's been another connection that we've made that has been so just, I think that that's the thing that I really can't stress enough is what happens when you get on a bike and you start talking to other bike people, right? When I became a winter cyclist, there is obviously a big, sort of barrier, I think, mentally as a woman. How can I do this, especially as a Brazilian woman? Already as women on bikes, we feel unsafe. Add the element of ice and snow and long commutes and all that, right? So one of the things that I did is I joined a local Discord was starting in our city here by my friend Andrew, who ended up being the one who came on my birthday ride. He started this Discord and lots of people were joining, and the winter cycling channel on there became super active because people just love talking about bikes, right? And they love talking about riding bikes in winter. I think that's it goes bike and then bike in winter. Those are the two things that bike people like to talk about.
Yeah. Well, if we pause just a moment here and reflect on this, where we're at right now on your channel, is that, you've got one video that's popped and it's well over 10,000 views. You're at 11,000 views on a video that's the first 30 days of e-biking, what I learned. And this is the great thing about YouTube. We were just talking about this an hour ago here at the house, about the power of YouTube is stuff like this, where people can actually learn something. They can actually, they turn to YouTube to try to learn something new. So it's not surprising to me that that's your top video of, people want to hear from you of what you learned in your first 30 days of e-biking.
It's funny because that video really didn't take off at first at all. It wasn't a lot of views. The second one on there really popped off right away. But that first one didn't really take off. But again, that's the power of YouTube, right? It sits there and then people will find it and then they will start commenting and it will sort of be fed to other people as well. So yeah, I mean, my channel is not monetized. I do it mostly for just passion. I have a passion to share my ideas with people. And part of my trajectory in bike advocacy is to get more women riding bikes, right? And when I discovered the e-bike, that to me was a game changer because I didn't have to fight the wind. I had to fight the cold, but I didn't, the wind was no longer a factor, right? The ride that was taking me an hour and a half because of the winds in winter got shortened to 45 minutes, right? So I really wanted to share that, especially with other women, to show that, there is a way around this. You don't have to be some kind of a sport hero. Get an e-bike and get around, right?
Yeah. I also, noticed here too, we've got a couple of videos that are a little bit more on the advocacy side of things. And so when we look at, these, top 6 videos here, we also see, two of them here, both just above 2,000 views. We see the Why So Close and then the Idaho stop, where you guys did like this demonstration and really sort of like re-emphasized why it's silly to try to apply motor vehicle laws to people riding bikes. Bikes are not cars. And so it's really, really important to understand. So the Idaho stop, which is colloquially known as, it is a set of laws that give bikes the opportunity to treat a stop sign like a yield and a stop light like a stop sign. And then there's like 18 states or whatever. I'm not sure if any Canadian provinces have a law like this yet. No, not yet. You're shaking your head. So I highly encourage cities and states to adopt the Colorado safety stop is the law that they use, or the name of the law that they use, or the Idaho stop. Idaho was the first. I think it was like 18 years ago that they put theirs in, and so it's it's kind of like been there long enough to demonstrate that it's valid. And I can't remember how many total states, maybe 18 is from that. The number of states that have actually passed laws to be able to do this. It's just much safer to actually navigate through the streets when you're not constantly, coming to a full stop at a stop sign, especially when there's absolutely nobody around. It's like you can treat that as a yield. And then, for stop lights, you're able to come to a stop, see that it's safe to proceed, and proceed when it's safe for you to do so on a bike. Obviously, not blowing through stop signs and not blowing through stop lights. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about reckless riding of a bike. But that's not what you guys did. You did this as a demonstration, and the results were pretty amazing. Why don't you walk us through the gist of what happens in this video?
So what happened was, again, in Canada, our provinces dictate the traffic laws, right? So I think it's a lot like the States as well. And nobody wants to be first at anything, right? So what we did here is we're like, okay, this is what you want us to do. Then we will show you what it looks like when we do it. And we're going to do it single file, like you say. And we're going to do it during rush hour in one of the busier streets because we want to and it was a neighborhood street. It wasn't a major thoroughfare because we needed stop signs to do this demonstration, right? So within 5 minutes of the demonstration, there was 2 car-on-car collisions because the drivers were very confused, number one, and they were terrified. And you can hear. So the bike community here is crazy powerful. We, this saying that comes out saying the all-powerful bicycle lobby or the all-powerful lobby, right? So here we feel that there's only really 300 of us on this Discord that we have, this local Discord that are really active. But we feel like thousands because one person has an idea and the idea takes off. Like there is no stopping it. People say, "Did you organize it?" I'm like, you don't understand. There's no stopping once the idea gets out there. One person makes a new, a policy review that gets submitted to the province. One person writes the media release. We have several people that are super skilled and ready to act on it. So then this protest happened, and it was an hour of this. The news came out, and of course, nothing came of it. We wrote to the provincial government, but the only thing they said was like, yeah, well, there's no other provinces in Canada that currently have this law, so we are not going to pass it. We will take it into consideration. Thanks for writing. Thanks for nothing. Right?
Yeah. And how much do you think of that is part of the problem is that no other provinces have gone through and passed a similar type of, like a Colorado safety stop law or an Idaho stop law? Do you think that that's part of the problem is that because there's not that first province, there's not that first state, Idaho was the first. I don't remember the context of how they came to be the first, but it was pretty brave that they paved the way to be the first of 50 states to be able to say, we're going to do this. It makes sense. Do you think that it's going to take BC or Quebec or some other province to be able to be like, no, we need to do this?
It's going to take a government that has the political will. I'm going to say will so that I don't get banned on YouTube.
What would you say the odds-on favorite would be? Would it be BC with British Columbia?
BC makes the most noise about it.
I meant to say BC with Vancouver. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So BC probably is the closest because they have been making a little noise about it. They have been changing some of the traffic laws on the speed at which you can pass a cyclist depending on the road and or the distance at which you can pass a cyclist depending on speed. So they're making some headway. And also, for example, Victoria has some great bike infrastructure. They are prioritizing the bike. There's a large share of users that use the bike for commuting. They have better weather. So there is a large chance that it will be BC. Quebec, I think, would be a close second. I'm not familiar with the Quebec provincial government. I know that on the municipal level of Quebec City and Montreal, we have some strong leaders who are willing to make, decisions instead of just worrying about getting reelected, right?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking of how strong, Mayor LaPlante is there in Montreal. So I could totally see them putting some pressure on the provincial government to say, you know what,
is that a woman?
Let's update. Yeah, heck yeah. Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because it's one of the things that I talk about frequently here on the channel is that, some of the most progressive and the strongest mayors that we're seeing worldwide are female. They're women, strong women that are actually seeing things through the eyes, I think, of being able to appreciate what the power of the bicycle is. And Melissa Bruntlett and I have talked about this before, of when you look at, the types of trips that that mothers end up taking, they're oftentimes what we call trip chaining, where they're doing these little additional trips as part of caregiving and things like this. Not to get too terribly into gender stereotypes or anything like that, but there's a level of appreciation and awareness that I think is just, I don't think it's a coincidence that when we look at Mayor Hidalgo and we look at Mayor LaPlante and we say, yes,
Yeah, exactly.
you go, girl, because it's awesome. Yeah.
One of the things about that I bring up all the time is there is a book that I think everyone should read, and especially males, and it's called Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. I talked about this on a different podcast that I did, and it talks about how women are the primary caregivers, and we make the little trips that contribute the most to the GDP, while the men are going to work, taking their cars and using the major routes. Oftentimes the women all over the world are taking the side streets, are taking their bikes, are making the streets, the trips with the strollers and the buses, right? So Sweden did this experiment where they were clearing the snow out of the side routes first, because cars can't get through. They can't get through snow, especially the way that vehicles are getting so huge these days, right? And so they started clearing the side streets and making it easier for women to push strollers, for women to ride bikes. And the GDP went up considerably because the women were able to get to the grocery store, to the mall, to buy the clothing, to give care to their parents. So if we prioritize women in our society, chances are everyone will be better off. We are half, and we take care of the little ones for the most part. Not to stereotype the gender here, but it's the reality still in most countries of the world.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing that kind of bubbles up from this is also even the data that we collect when we look at the data of bicycle mode share. Oftentimes the data, at least in the United States, is skewed towards the commute, is skewed towards, the longer distance commute to work, and not even taking into consideration all of those other trips that you just talked about. It's those shorter trips, and it can oftentimes be, when we take into those trips into consideration, they're often very bikeable distances, if only we had safe infrastructure to be able to support, those shorter trips and those caregiving trips and those trip chaining types of trips. And I think that's where, when you mentioned Victoria, we mentioned Vancouver, we mentioned Montreal, these cities, I think, in North America are just doing a fantastic job of empowering everyone of all ages and abilities, and especially, those caregiving women, for, making it safe and feasible and possible for them to do those short trips, those multiple trips by bike. And maybe even grab a sunflower and put it in your basket,
Exactly
as
right.
you're on your trip. Yeah.
Well, that right there with the sunflower, that's Daria. She's a powerhouse here too. She's a leader in the bike community. She organizes these fun group rides every second Tuesday in the summer. They're fun themed, and group rides that are fun themed are really good for the community, and it really brings us together. So yeah, the women are doing great things in this city, absolutely, and we have a strong male community as well in
Yeah. Yeah.
Winnipeg. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
it's
think what I love too about this photo, and I'm glad you channeled and shared a little bit more about her, is that she's riding a Dutch bike, and it's a step through frame Dutch bike, and that's how I know Winnipeg. I've profiled the Plain Bicycle Project
that's
before.
correct, with Aaron
Yes,
Riediger, and
yeah, with
I
Aaron
remember that.
Riediger, who has just this delightful podcast series that she produced a few years ago, and encourage everybody. I'll include the link below to that episode. I interviewed her twice, and they talk about it of these Dutch bicycles, these relaxed, upright, casual bikes, as being like a culture bomb that went off there in Winnipeg, that really helps support, sort of like what you were talking about, was just how strong the community is there. And you mentioned the Discord channel that you all have there. Talk about the power of that Discord channel and what it's meant to the bicycle community there, and how you're able to mobilize with that.
So with the Discord channel, we can give weather tips or, trail clearing tips. And it was mostly that for the longest time. And then one morning, June 6th this year, we all get to work, and, we're about to share our routes, talk about, hey, how'd it go going in today? And someone posts, hey guys, is everyone okay? And there was a news article of a release from the Winnipeg police saying a cyclist was hit on Wellington Crescent, which is a really common bike route, sort of close in central Winnipeg. And we're all, getting close to the computers, zooming in to see if we recognize the bike. It doesn't look good. There's yellow tape. It was just a terrifying feeling. And I think that we were glued to our screens for the better part of the morning, until an announcement came out saying that a cyclist had been killed and there was speed involved. So the name was released, and we didn't know who that was, but it didn't matter to us. It didn't matter that it wasn't someone who was officially part of our community, because the minute you get on a bike, you are part of our community, right?
Yeah.
So
and is that
we were able.
Is that what this ride is here? Is in honor of this person
In
who lost his
honor
life?
of, yeah, his name is Rob Jenner. And so what happened at first is we had to, before we could do this, well, the very first thing that happened was we organized a protest where we shut down that intersection. 200 cyclists showed up that day, and we organized it overnight. It was one of those, what time are we going to go? Who's all going to come? There was 200 cyclists that showed up in matter of just organizing overnight. And then the community members started coming down from their apartments, coming out of their houses and joining our protest. The police shut down the intersection so that, drivers weren't trying to get through. So it was quiet, it was safe, but it was solemn, right? So we knew we wanted to do a ghost bike, and there isn't a lot of ghost bikes in Winnipeg in the last few years, partly because the community hadn't been really organized before. But we needed to get permission to do this ghost bike, because it is a reminder to the family of the location where their loved one was killed. So it was tasked with me as the bicycle mayor to reach out to the family and see if they would be willing to let us honor his life this way, right? Because it is kind of a protest as well. So we wanted to make sure they were on board with it. And I got in touch with Wendy, who you see on the picture there, and we started talking. She's so amazing. She's like the most amazing human. And she allowed the bike community into her life. She really embraced us and invited us to celebrate his life. So the pictures before, we did sort of a celebration of his life with 200 people at his old place of employment, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Lots of people showed up, and we rode all. And I don't know if you noticed, but we're all wearing red, which was
yes,
his.
I did notice that.
Yeah, so red was his favorite color, and he loved wearing red to end the week because he liked finishing strong, kind of like Tiger Woods, right? So then we said, let's wear red to finish this strong as well. His wife is becoming an advocate as well. We are planning some fundraising to bring awareness to bike safety, and also to donate to a school downtown that focuses on teaching kids how to get around by bike, teaching them how to fix bikes. But this whole thing really came about because our community was so united on our Discord server. We were able to do a lot. The Idaho Stop protest came together from that Discord. We have some people who are so passionate and active that if I was going to say their names, I'd be sitting here for an hour telling you the 200 people that impact my life every day.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. So that also then prompted you to start this.
Yeah, so I was actually talking to Sarah Goodyear from the War on Cars one day and telling her, and she seemed really impressed about our Discord server. What a great idea. And I said, well, actually, why don't we just create one for everyone? That way, anyone in the world can join and we can share ideas. And so I started this Discord server. I'd love more people to join. At the moment, it's not very busy, not very active, but it's good because then the people who are there get a lot of attention. And we're hoping that at least we can teach others how to mobilize their own communities, because, there are a lot of us out there. We just need to find each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I've got the Discord server here on, or this particular Discord, the Global Bike Advocacy. And yeah, we've got lots of little chats going on, the opportunity for you to introduce yourself and where you're from, and add some other color to it as well. I have to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time out in Discord servers and in that environment. I'm just spending so much time heads down producing content as a YouTube, primary YouTube content creator. That's what I do. And so I don't have a whole lot of extra time for that, but I know that it's there, and I know that it is a wonderful resource for folks. And I probably should have spent a little bit more time out there just, introducing to the audience out there who I am and who Active Towns is as a resource as well. What other things do you imagine are going to happen out there on that global advocacy Discord channel?
So the reason that we love our Discord server so much is because social media is becoming very toxic. I noticed on my Instagram that as soon as one of my reels, I have one reel that really took off, and it's me yelling at some guy in a bike lane because he was parked there on his phone, or, just sitting waiting for someone. And I kind of just took off on him. And this happens on the regular, but for some reason I thought I'd post one of the videos, and it really went viral. And the hate that I started getting on there was so vile and threatening that I had to shut off the comments. The same happened on, you were showing my YouTube channel, the Why So Close video. I had to shut off the comments on there because I was getting threats.
Right.
And I don't know what it is about men in trucks that are so sensitive to a woman riding a bike. I'm sorry I got so close to you. I don't know. So this Discord offers a layer of protection, right? I can vent on there and I know that someone's going to have my back. I can ask for help and I'm going to have genuine help from someone who can say, hey, you need to report this, follow these steps. This has happened to me before. You're going to be okay. Is there anything I can do for you? And this community really came together. When we are actually together in person, it's kind of strange because we know each other so well from the Discord. So I really am hoping we can do the same with the global Discord server, that we can become a global community. As part of the Bikes Network, we have a WhatsApp chat where we share ideas with each other and we have quarterly online meetings. But I find that some of the chatter gets lost in there because a WhatsApp chat is so linear. And the nice thing about the Discord is we can say, okay, this is the advocacy channel. Is there any advocacy you're working on? And this is the whatever channel, general or introduction. So you can kind of group these things so that they don't all get lost. And that's what I'm hoping will happen, is we will be able to use each other as a resource to connect to each other, to mobilize each other. There's some people who are really quiet in their cities because they don't know where the bike people are, And I always say in my videos, if you're lonely and you're riding a bike, whenever you stop at a stop sign and you see another person on a bike, just say, hey, nice bike. Guess what? In 5 minutes, you're going to have a brand new friend.
Yeah.
People love talking about their bikes.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the great thing about riding a bike is that you're able to have like little connections, little social interactions. They can be as much as just a smile and a wave, or as much as, oh, cool bike, that's great. It's really hard to have that sort of interaction when you're enclosed in a middle box. Yeah, exactly.
There was another, I think that Erin talked a little bit about this on her interview with you, right? The slow ride, the take it easy ride, right? Exactly. And also, there's a movie called Motherload, and
yes,
I don't know if
fantastic.
you've seen it, but
Liz Canning is the director. So and Liz has been on, and so folks, you'll want to watch that episode as well, because we get in deep into all the loaded stuff in Motherload.
Oh, exactly. The idea, I think one of the things that really struck me when I was watching it, and it kind of brought me to tears at a really odd part of the movie, was, when that man gets in the car and he's isolated, right? We are so isolated and insulated inside our vehicles that we lose touch with our community. I was talking to Sarah Goodyear about this too. When you ride a bike, it was Mark Twain that said you become part of the communities you bike through, right? And here in Winnipeg, we have a large Indigenous population. We have a large unhoused population. And when you're in a car, they're just someone you pass by, right? It's a problem you hear about in the news about, the lack of housing, right? Poverty. Those are things you hear about in the news. But when you're riding a bike, you have to make a choice. Do I want to take the route that's going to be through an encampment, but it's a beautiful river route? Or do I want to be on the road sharing with the cars, right? And as a bike person, I will take the encampment route any day because it's way safer than being on the road with a car.
Sure.
But when you're in a car, you have no idea what your city is really going through for the most part. I'm not saying all car drivers, but the chances are that if, the bike really gives you a connection to your community in the way that the car doesn't.
Yeah, and part of it is speed and part of it is isolation. You know, if you're traveling through, the environment at 60 kilometers per hour, that's completely different than if you're going through, at you name a number, 30 kilometers per hour, just below 20 miles per hour, you're able to see the world at a different level. Slow that down to 20 kilometers per hour, and you're really feeling the richness of what you see around you. It's totally different, totally different. You mentioned Bikes, and so Bikes is the organization. They're based in Amsterdam, and it's a worldwide Bicycle Mayor program and many other types of programs. Talk a little bit about Bikes and how you became a Bicycle Mayor.
So I was already really involved in my community through Bike Winnipeg, actually. Bike Winnipeg is our local not-for-profit advocacy group. And one of the meetings, one of the board members said, look, Patty, I think you should apply to be our bike mayor because before some old white guy does it. And I said,
Yes.
okay, well, I don't know if you think that I should be. So I looked into it, and really it's a network. It gives me access to resources. It gives me access to people who are doing a lot of work in their own towns. There's over 200 bicycle mayors all over the world. They're in every continent now, right? So I talk about it like wearing a cape. I'm really nobody. I'm just another bike advocate. But when I have this cape, I can contact you and say, hey, I'm the Bicycle Mayor of Winnipeg. I'd love to get together. I'd love to hear what you're doing there, right? So it gives me this superpower of being able to connect with other bicycle mayors all over the world. In fact, I'm going to Brazil in December, and I'm going to connect with 2 bicycle mayors in our travels. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what people are doing all over the world. So to become a bicycle mayor, you have to submit an application and you have an interview, and you have to have 3 letters of recommendation from people in the community who think you're a good choice. So yeah.
Fantastic. And yes, it's you mentioned you have your WhatsApp communication with that. It's a tremendous program and initiative. I did have the CEO and co-founder of Bikes on the channel, so if you're interested in that interview, folks, again, I'll leave the link below so you can check that out. So what's new and what's up for the future for you? Anything super fun, exciting on the near horizon?
We are activating our community right now. Like I said, I'm on the board of Bike Winnipeg, and as an advocacy group, we have large needs. Bike Winnipeg has 2 mandates: one, to advocate for better, safer streets and a completion of the bicycle network, and 2, for people to use this network, right? So for me, I decided this year that one of the things that I was going to do on my YouTube videos, which is not exactly that popular, and I'm not going to go viral with these things, is to create videos of safe routes all over Winnipeg.
Right.
Because our network is not complete, there are a lot of gaps. It's important that people know sort of the shortcuts and the streets that have, the slower traffic or neighborhood greenways. And so I've started a project where there you go, the Winnipeg bike routes. So I kind of show people, okay, this is how you get from here to there, and they can download a Google map and follow along. And people love it right now. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. And then, I have been part of a few meetings with our active transportation committee, I guess, Public Works, and the people who work on active transportation. They often ask for Bike Winnipeg's input on their routes. So I've been in a few meetings. To be honest with you, it's kind of frustrating because there isn't a lot of money. Every time we look at a project and we say, wow, this will be great, and they go, well, don't get excited, it's not funded yet. So
And how does infrastructure get funded there? That's my next question. My follow-up is, how does infrastructure, if there's not money there, well, where does the money come from?
Well, money for road infrastructure and AT infrastructure comes from property taxes, just like everything else. But, the problem here is that a lot of our road infrastructure ends up going to road renewal or potholes, right? With our extreme weather, it's crazy the amount of maintenance that our roads require, and vehicles are getting heavier and traffic is getting heavier. It is, it's a humanitarian crisis, really. The amount of traffic, the amount of big vehicles, and we're trying to work with our city officials. We're saying, look, like, more money in bike infrastructure means less to worry about potholes. But the political will here, just like in a lot of places in North America, is they have this view of, well, I need to get elected, or in order to get elected, I need to promise one more lane.
Yeah. Well, and that brings us right back around to some of the strong women mayors that we've been pointing to. The Mayor Hidalgos of the world and the Mayor LaPlante of the world, they have basically just been very, very upfront in saying, this is our vision for the city and we're moving forward with this vision. If this doesn't match with what you want, vote us out. And they don't. They keep reelecting them because it is a vision that once it's on the ground, you start to realize, wow, this is really empowering. This is really meaningful. And to your point...
Are you saying I should run for mayor?
Well, there you go. You're already the bicycle mayor. What the heck? Why not? But you know what I mean? To your point is you're not getting a very good return on your dollar anyways for your investment of automobile infrastructure because of the extreme weather, because of the extreme weight and the fact that these larger vehicles are beating the heck out of the roads anyways. That's the great thing about bicycle infrastructure and bicycle network is that if it's put down, if it's built well, it lasts a lot longer because the impact of a person on a bike, the impact of a family on a cargo bike is nothing compared to a massive SUV. So yeah, I think there's a great return on investment story there from an ROI perspective of, hey, let's invest in this safe and inviting all ages and abilities network, and we'll get a far greater return on investment compared to your typical, asphalt roadway.
And you know that, and I know that. And chances are our mayor knows that too. Our mayor actually rides a bike to work, but the truth is he wants to get reelected. And,
Well, I think that's what you were talking about earlier, though, right? Is okay. I'm glad that this conversation has gone in this direction because it is about political will and it is about getting reelected. The way that we can really help that along is trying to really bring more people into the fold. And that's where building up the community and building up the awareness and making our tent as wide as possible. And that's where I think especially women and families can really help us grow the awareness of, well, who's a cyclist? Well, a cyclist is not that dude in Lycra. A cyclist is like everyone can be someone who, wants to get on a bike and get to school or get to the grocery store or get to a friend's house. And you start to realize that we need to grow the constituency so that the the electeds know that, I need to support this because if I don't support this, I won't get reelected. And that's when the political will really comes around, is when they see that there's ramifications for not supporting active mobility.
Yes. And, a city that has made great headway in this is Edmonton. I don't know if that's in your radar or not, but one thing they did is they slowly replaced their city council. Mm-hmm. With people who were pro bike infrastructure, who were we are a winter city. We will do all these things that we do in summer, we will also do in winter, right? They stole our title. We are Winterpeg, and they went and declared themselves as a winter city, and now we're sitting here going, what? Yeah. What do we do?
And aren't they also sort of like an oil and gas city too?
Well, here's the thing. They are a progressive city inside of a very conservative province, but their city council has vision. They're saying we can't sustain this. We don't want our young people to leave. So let's provide housing. Let's cut the parking minimums. Let's put in an LRT. Let's put in bike lanes with priority winter clearing so that people can use them year round. Let's respect that, right? So if you don't follow Michael Jens on Instagram, I suggest you do. He's one of the city councils in Edmonton. It's shocking every time I see his post. I'm like, you're a city councilor? You're just so bold and, and willing to put his neck on the line. And he's getting reelected and people love him. And it goes to show, listen, you got to stand up. You can't just compromise all the time, because if you compromise all the time, you're going to end up compromised.
Yeah. And I think that's where we can help as advocates and activists and community members, is we can have their back when they do stand up. And that's where you're able to get that virtuous cycle of being able to, as a leader, show political will. And then that virtue, kind of that wheel starts going. It's like, oh, this person is standing up for us, and then grow that group and basically have their back when they do that, because that's incredibly important. I want to pop over to your website too. Okay, so here's your website, and you've got your blogs there. I love your logo, by the way.
Thanks. So the joke is that one day I put a tiara on my helmet as a joke, and I never took it off. So I'm like, oh, that's my look now. So
it's fantastic. That's fantastic. So this is, again, we'll include the link to your website in the video description below and the show notes, so folks can pop over there and click on those links. You also sent over how do we phrase this document? It's the WPI document.
The MPI. So
the MPI,
in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, we have public insurance. So I don't know how you guys do your car insurance there, but here we have public insurance. And they release a traffic collision statistics report every year. But as you can see, they just released the one from 2 years ago. It's very far behind. I imagine that it's because they need to analyze, make sure that a collision is like who's at fault, and there's lots of legal things involved. We can make excuses for them all day. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight here is on page 3. It says that overall, our traffic collisions in Manitoba increased by 25% in 2022. So this is old data, and it's already horrible, right? We know that traffic collisions are even higher. Sorry, the sun is on my face, so you I'll move forward a bit here. But our traffic collisions have increased by 25% from 21 to 22. 95 people were killed, which is 27% more than the 5-year average, right? And pedestrians accounted for 20% of people killed, right? So if you go to page 5, I just want to tell you the top reasons here on why people are the most prevalent factors for victims killed. On the bottom of page 5, it says distracted driving, 41% of people killed, right? Speed, 26%, and impairment, 17%.
Yeah, let's zoom in on this a little bit so we can actually see that. Yeah, look at that. Yeah.
So how many times as a cyclist do I pull up to a car, as a driver, and they're on their cell phones, right? And I knock on the window and they get so angry at me and they flip their fingers and they yell at me. And I'm like, but you're on your cell phone. How did you see me roll that stop sign?
Yeah, I'm assuming in your province, driving while on your phone is illegal. Is that correct?
It is illegal. And there's a $250 penalty for it or something like that, even higher probably. And here they are. There's no punishment. There's no enforcement, and you tell anyone you ride your bike and they say, well, you guys are always rolling through stop signs. You never stop at stop signs. I'm like, well, maybe you can get off your cell phone and see the times that we do stop. I don't know.
Yeah. Hence the demonstration that you did, and say, well,
Exactly.
do you want us to show you what it's like if we stop at the stop sign the way you want us to be, like you should when you're driving? Because again, a bike is not a car. We should stop treating them like they are. Yeah.
Well, I think that what we need to really do going forward is realize that this is a serious humanitarian crisis. People are dying on our streets because of speed and vehicle size and distraction. We need to do something before it's...
Yeah, and I like to re-emphasize that those countries that have been very successful at addressing this challenge, they do not address it by enforcement. They address this successfully by street design, by network design. You want somebody to pay attention while driving, then create an environment where it forces them to pay attention while driving. Part of the challenge is that we build our network with such huge, wide open spaces that it's easy to text and drive at the same time. You've got a massively oversized lane that doesn't demand your attention. It's really easy as drivers to get a false sense of security, and that also encourages high speed. And voila, what do you end up having? You have both distraction and speed.
Absolutely. And a friend of mine was complaining to me because, I'm also the complaint department, I guess, whenever someone's upset about bike lanes. And a friend of mine was complaining to me, well, I was in Victoria and I was driving there and there's way too many bike lanes. It's so hard to drive there. I have to just keep an eye on the road all the time. And I'm like,
yes.
Really?
It's
Can
working.
you imagine that? That.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to drive here. There's so many pedestrians, and it's like, it's a nice place to be.
And I have to pay attention, and I have to go slow, and I don't know which way to go. It's not very clear. Yes, it's called slow down.
I think it's important too, because we are in jest sort of laughing at these people because it is kind of comical that it's there. But I also want to always emphasize that we have to cut the drivers a little bit of slack in the sense that this is the system for the last 80 to 100 years that has been built for us as drivers. And change is hard. And this is what we become to expect. We've become, really conditioned to feel like the road is our space and it's wide open and we can drive fast. And all of a sudden things start to change.
Car ads.
Boom. Yeah, here, let's zoom out. Ads. Let's zoom out. Let's get that. Okay, go ahead and show it. There you go.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
The Tom Flood classic. And so I do like to emphasize that, we are in a situation where as we are trying to change our built environment, as we're trying to make our communities more conducive to walking and biking, it is very, very difficult for people to deal with that change, especially the elderly who have been driving on these same streets for 30, 40, 50 years and then are having a difficult time dealing with the changes. I see it in community open houses all the time where they're like, what do you mean you're narrowing the lanes? I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm going to have to slow down. I'm afraid I'm going to hit something. And we're like, yes, that's the whole point. But we have to have a sense of empathy for the fact that change is always difficult. Some drivers are idiots and some drivers are just, horrible. But the majority of people out there, if they understood more why this is important and it's good for their lives as well, and it will probably save their lives as well. I
Well,
think
you know
that
what
we
would
can make
really help
progress. Yeah.
actually is, well, let's reteach and retest then.
Yeah, I mean, I think reteaching and retesting is part of it, but also just having a better understanding of what it means to build, an environment that is more conducive to encouraging people to be able to walk and bike to places. Because when you actually talk with people about what they like about their last visit to Europe, and they're like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. I was able to walk and bike and take transit, and it was amazing. And you're like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. And it really kind of emphasizes, the logo that I have, the tagline that streets are for people. It's like reinforcing the fact that streets have literally been around for thousands of years. We've just only allowed in the last 120 years for them to get monopolized by cars. So I think it's having that sense of empathy and a little bit of patience with people in the face of change to their environment, and also expecting that we're going to get the worst responses too, because we know that the status quo will not go silently. They will lash out, and we have to expect that. And when it comes, I think we have to be like a duck and let it roll off our back a little bit, because if we don't, we're just going to get revved up ourselves. And because you've been at the tail end, the receiving end of a lot of vitriol, and that's
Yes,
not fair.
absolutely. But in order to have them people get used to the change in 20 years, we need to make the change today.
Absolutely.
The problem is that we are making these changes so slow and incrementally, and at the same time, the vehicles are getting exponentially bigger, and everyone has a vehicle in their house. We have someone in the neighborhood that it's 2 adults and 3 children, and there's 5 cars in the garage.
Well, and you guys have a great example of a quick moving, network. I think it was Calgary, right, that built out the backbone of a network pretty much over a 18-month period or 24-month period.
Yeah, I think much like Paris, they took advantage of the pandemic and just said, let's just put this down and see what happens, right? They're not winning that battle, though. I think there is some resistance, and some of these temporary lanes are getting taken out. But cities like Edmonton are making $100 million investment in the next 5 years over and above their pre-planned road renewal. So that is leadership right there. That is someone saying, well, you know what? If we want people to be used to it in 20 years, we have to do it today. We don't have all the time in the world.
And I would say that we really don't have to wait 20 years for them to really get used to it. Humans actually adapt incredibly fast. So if you can actually get demonstration projects on the ground quickly and make it happen, you will start to see change. And we saw this in Sevilla also, back in 2008. 2008, in an 18-month period, they dropped an entire 120-kilometer bicycle network in place. Followed that up with that's the hardware. I like to call the software being the incentive programs and the engagement activities and the education, and several very, very powerful women and bike shop owners started teaching women how to be able to ride with their children. And they went from basically 0% mode share, 1%, less than 1%, to, double digit 10% mode share of bikes. And what I loved about visiting Sevilla in 2018 was that's who I saw on the streets. It was so amazing. I saw women and children riding, the elderly riding, relaxed, upright bikes, not the dudes in Lycra. They're there anyways. That 1% of the population, they're going to show up anyways. We're not worried about them. We were worried about getting other people who would ride if it were only safe to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it can happen fast if you get it down. Yeah. It can happen fast. The change, and that's what we do see over and over and over again. If you get something on the ground that's authentically safe, people will use it, but also the drivers will get used to the fact that it's a different dynamic on the street. They actually need to slow down. They get used to that.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's hope for that.
For sure. Okay, I want to go back to your YouTube page here real quick. Everybody, please pop on over, sign up for, subscribe to her page here. Really do appreciate it. Let's zoom out here so we can actually get your full page there. Boom. Right there.
There's my tiara right there.
There's the tiara, on the helmet. I love it. And here's your Instagram as well. You're very active out on Instagram and on Threads. So I encourage folks to follow along with you there. I will include the Threads link as well in the show notes. Final comments. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with? Any pearls of wisdom or inspiration for people who are tuning in from around the globe?
I always say this one thing, that if you're watching this and you're feeling lonely and you're feeling, especially after the pandemic, like you've lost your people, all you have to do is just add a bike. Take your bike out. You got one in the garage, it's been in the rafters. You haven't used it in a while. If you're not one of us bike people yet, go grab it, go for a ride. And at the first stoplight, when you're beside someone else, say, hey, where's the bike people? Where do you guys hang out? Where do you have a WhatsApp group? Is there a group ride? And keep doing that until someone says, yeah, actually I'm going to a ride tonight, and really get in that community, become part of it. Your life will change immensely. Even if you have no desire of bike commuting, doesn't matter. You can use a bike to go get your groceries. You can use your bike to just get around the block and get some fresh air, and just let that change you, because it will. There is no way that you can ride a bike and not be changed forever.
Yeah. Get on a bike and put on a smile.
Yes, absolutely.
Patty, this has been so much fun catching up with you. Thank you so much for joining me on the Active Towns podcast.
Thank you so much. It was so great. Great chatting with you, John.
Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Patty Wiens. And if you did, please, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, I'd be honored to have you subscribe to the channel. Just click on that subscription button down below and ring that notifications bell. And if you're enjoying this content here on the Active Towns channel, please consider supporting my efforts. It's easy to do. Just head on over to activetowns.org. At the top of the page, there is a support tab. There's several different options, including becoming an Active Towns Patreon supporter. Patrons do get access to all this video content early and ad-free. Again, every little bit helps and is very much appreciated. And until next time, this is John signing off by wishing you much activity, health, and happiness. Cheers. And again, sending a huge thank you out to all my Active Towns ambassadors supporting the channel on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube Super Thanks, as well as making contributions to the nonprofit and purchasing things from the Active Towns store. Every little bit adds up and it's much appreciated. Thank you all so much.